In recent years, America, as well as other countries on Earth, have begun to accept refugees into their cities. Many other cities and countries, however, do not allow them in yet. Even in the places that do, hostility is high towards these refugees. Why is the stigma against these refugees so strong? Madeleine Albright is known as the first female Secretary of State, and she is the highest-ranking woman in the history of the U.S. government. She attended Wellesley College and graduated, and began a career in politics that eventually launched her towards her Secretary of State title. Kamal, a man who was working to rebuild his reputation as a five-star chef, ran a hotel restaurant in Damascus when the government in Syria abducted and tortured him. Kamal and his family of 5 fled to Houston, Texas in search of a better life. Here Kamal has his own restaurant and is working hard to support his family, all while still undergoing treatments for his wounds. Fayez Shara is dedicated to working hard to stock shelves at Walmart during his graveyard shift. He and his family are studying hard to learn English so that they can contribute more to American society. But what sets these people apart from your average citizen? What is their connection to the refugee movement across the world? Well, Madeleine had to flee from her home country of the Czech Republic many times during her childhood. For Kamal to be able to protect his family, he had to come to America in search of freedom. The Shiraz were living in constant fear for their lives, as many people were being killed daily around them. They were able to make it out of the country easily, and were able to flee to America. There were very few options for people fleeing around the world. Just like how Rama al-Nahar, a 16-year-old Syrian, explains, "Why are people afraid of us? We've escaped a war. We just want to live in a free country. There was no freedom for the people over there." With terrorism on the rise in the world and continuing war in the Middle East, it's easy to become fearful for your safety. People from the Middle East have grown up in a much more violent setting than we have here in America. These wonderful people are examples of how race or religion has nothing to do with how you act or what you believe in. They all had to brave everything, many leaving their families or possessions and homes behind just for a chance at freedom. Would a person who risked everything be so willing to throw it all away for an act of terrorism? So what about the facts? What can we gather from what we know already?
About 6 in 10 Syrians are now displaced from their home, a number unprecedented in recent years. The Syrian conflict has displaced millions of citizens since the protests against the al-Assad government began 5 years ago. Today, an estimated 12.5 million refugees are displaced, up from less than 1 million in 2011, according to a Pew Research Center analysis of global refugee data. Displaced Syrians worldwide include those internally displaced from Syria, refugees living in neighboring countries, or relocated to other countries like Canada and the U.S., and those in Europe awaiting asylum. There are about 4.7 million Syrian refugees. Children 11 years and younger, male/female, account for 38.5 of them. It takes almost 2 years for a refugee to be vetted before being allowed into the United States, making it the hardest vetting system in the world. Syrians represent just 2.3% of the 57,350 total global refugees accepted by the U.S. as of August 31st, 2015. Don't believe us?
Through what our screening process actually is. If you're a refugee, first, you apply through the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, which collects documents and performs interviews. Incidentally, less than 1% of refugees worldwide end up being recommended for resettlement. But if you're one of them, you may then be referred to the State Department to begin the vetting process. At this point, more information is collected. You'll be put through security screenings by the National Counterterrorism Center, the FBI, and the Department of Homeland Security. And if you're a Syrian refugee, you'll get an additional layer of screening called the Syria Enhanced Review, which may include a further check by a special part of Homeland Security, the USCIS Fraud Detection and National Security Directorates. And don't relax yet, because we've barely even started. Then you finally get an interview with USCIS officers, and you'll also be fingerprinted so your prints can be run through the biometric databases of the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Defense. And if you make it through all that, you'll then have health screenings, which, let's face it, may not go too well for you, because you may have given yourself a stroke getting through this process so far. But if everything comes back clear, you'll be enrolled in cultural orientation classes, all while your information continues to be checked recurrently against terrorist databases to make sure that no new information comes in that wasn't caught before. All of that has to happen before you get near a plane. This process typically takes 18 to 24 months once you've been referred by the UN to the United States. This is the most rigorous vetting anyone has to face before entering this country.
However, America hasn't even been doing as much as the rest of the world. Since 2013, Germany has committed to accepting 35,000 Syrian refugees, and Canada has committed to 11,300. The U.S. has taken in less refugees than European countries that are smaller than it. Since the first major refugee crisis in the world, the countries of origin of refugees coming to the U.S. has shifted during the past 3 decades. The annual number of refugee arrivals in the U.S. peaked at about 210,000 in 1980 as well as a large wave of refugees from Vietnam and Cambodia. In the 1990s, an influx of refugees from Europe came to the U.S. due to political turmoil in the former Soviet Union and genocide in Kosovo. After the 2001 passage of the Patriot Act, which broadened the definition of what it means to be defined as a terrorist group, the annual number of refugees allowed in the U.S. dipped dramatically to fewer than 30,000 refugees in 2002 and 2003. But upticks in refugee arrivals started again in 2004 with a wave of Somali refugees. In 2008, thousands of Burmese and Bhutis were granted refugee status. Of more than 70,000 refugees who have been admitted to the U.S. so far in fiscal year 2016, the largest number have come from the Dominican Republic, the Congo, Burma, and Syria. As we can see from these facts, refugees are put through a lot of harsh experiences before they even get to the country they say are planning to live in. But a person who's gone through this much fear in order to make something happen risk it all on terrorism, Americans and people from around the world need to drop the stereotype that your region of birth determines how you act.